Police officers were instructed to leave the premises by the workers of a restaurant in California, citing discomfort caused and the establishment's status as a safe place. The owners were soon forced to regret their choice once the cops left. Welcome to USA Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. Now let's go to the story. 3 local police officers were refused service by the proprietors of the Hilda and Jesse restaurant in San Francisco, who made the announcement on the business's Instagram page. The employees gave an explanation for kicking them out, saying that they felt uneasy with armed cops there and wanted to make sure the restaurant remained a secure place. 3 uniformed and armed San Francisco police officers entered Hilda and Jesse's restaurant, according to the Instagram post. Our crew felt uneasy with their many guns shortly after we sat them down. Then we requested them to please go. The restaurant of Hilda and Jesse is a secure place. The statement continued by stating that, although they appreciate the police, they won't welcome back any policemen until they are off duty, not in uniform, and not carrying a weapon. Therefore, the SFPD complied. The San Francisco Police Department stands for safety with respect, even when it means respecting wishes that our officers and I find discouraging and personally disappointing, William Scott, chief of the SFPD, said. Customers immediately criticized the eatery on social media for prohibiting the cops once the decision was made. In an attempt to mitigate the damage, co-owner Rachel Silcox retracted her statement in an interview with KGO-TV, saying that their status as officers had no bearing on the decision, despite the fact that one of the requirements is that they not wear their uniforms inside the business. It's not about the fact that we are anti-police, added Silcox. It has to do with the fact that our restaurant forbids the use of firearms. We begged them to go respectfully since we were uneasy. The only relevant factor is that they were carrying firearms, not the fact that they are law enforcement officials. Naturally, the public was able to see through Silcox's justification. The public chastised Silcox and co-owner Christina Compton the next day. Their Yelp rating quickly fell to 1 star, the lowest conceivable rating. Consumer complaints about the restaurant's expensive meals and 20% required tipping filled the internet. They emphasized that the co-owner's mandated 20% tipping policy demonstrates their desire to provide fair compensation for their staff. All they want is not to have to pay for it themselves. I support fair wages, and Hilda and Jesse ought to be providing them rather than imposing them on their clients. Although I usually tip 20%, it's improper to make consumers tip. Simply raise your fees and be truthful about it, an irate client said. Others criticized the owners for their hypocrisy and irrational thinking. Some even went so far as to clarify the obvious. Gun-free zones do not bar violent criminals who break the law. Rather, they solely bar law-abiding gun owners. You cannot enter this secure area when it is your responsibility to ensure people's safety. They don't comprehend that anything becomes a weapon, including the chef's knife and the wall-mounted fire extinguisher, even though this is a weapon-free zone. Although there is no prejudice here, some people are not allowed to be seated or served because they feel uncomfortable with guns. They should only use spoons to cook and give their knives to the police. Weapons are not permitted. Managers and owners ought to feel embarrassed about themselves. There was another review that stated, investors should withdraw their funds and boycott this establishment. The co-owners backed down from their choice and issued a clumsy apology after realizing the negative reaction would not go away. This was the desperate action of any business thinker. We requested officers of the San Francisco Police Department to leave our restaurant on Friday, and we made a mistake for which we are sorry. We are appreciative of every police officer who puts forth much effort to ensure our safety, particularly in these trying times. As we continue to mend and build bridges with the SFPD, we hope that this will serve as an educational opportunity for us. We handled this poorly, and these are stressful times, co-owners Rachel Silcox and Christina Leagues Compton wrote. With their apologies, Silcox and Compton want to calm the irate consumers down. Regretfully, the harm has already occurred. The restaurant's proprietors have demonstrated that social justice is more important to them than the security of their staff and patrons. In actuality, Only law-abiding individuals and police officers will abide by their no-weapons policy. Their secure area is unimportant to those who want to harm you. In actuality, the disadvantaged and marginalized suffer the most when the cops are disarmed. Jack Limsey, Michaela's father, had his life turned upside down when she disappeared 5 years ago. He was left with an inexplicable void in his heart and no indication of her whereabouts. He was tormented by the unbearable pain every minute of the day. But one afternoon, as he was tending to his yard, Jack discovered something. He had no clue that he was about to spill the beans on a 5-year-old secret. Before his beloved young child disappeared, Jack had to overcome a number of challenges in his own life. After a rocky relationship, Jack and Michaela's mother decided to split and eventually get divorced. There was trauma from the bloody courtroom clashes that would never completely go away. Jack was granted exclusive custody of their daughter as part of the divorce settlement, while his ex-wife received their house and the most of their shared life. Michaela's parents were embroiled in a bitter custody battle following their divorce. Unable to contemplate his life without Michaela, Jack would not give up. Her mother Camila also put up a strong fight. In the end, Jack won full custody, an improbable victory for fathers. But it also meant he would forfeit the home they had shared and a large portion of their shared lives. Even so, he ought to have been ready for the worst that lay ahead. He gave his work his all since he was committed to providing Michaela with the best possible life. He put in extra long hours at work and faced every challenge head-on. As time passed, Jack had to deal with being a single father alone. His love life had diminished since he'd been focusing on his work and parenting his kid. His loneliness was pushing him to take a chance and go back out on the dating scene. Then, all of a sudden, one evening, everything came to a head. Jack experienced a glimmer of hope when Alyssa entered his life, just when he was beginning to feel hopeless. Her sensitivity, empathy, and compassion helped him mend the emotional scars his ex-wife had inflicted on him. Now Alyssa stood for a fresh start and gave Jack hope for success. Jack never would have imagined how well his relationship with Alyssa had gone. They had been dating for 2 years when he proposed, and they were shortly married. Alyssa had been Jack's confidant, his pillar of support and understanding for a very long time. Having witnessed the wounds from the past, she made every effort to aid in his recovery. Jack was enjoying this strange euphoria when something horrible happened. Michaela was gone. On a Saturday, the 13-year-old went out with several pals and never returned. Michaela allegedly took an Uber home, according to her pals. The worried pair hoped for the best as the inquiry got underway after they promptly filed a report. The worst was still to come, but they were unaware of it. Jack and Alyssa's happy marriage ended due to Michaela's unexplained abduction. With unwavering optimism that they would eventually locate their beloved daughter, the two of them started an interminable hunt. But what started off as a few hours turned into a few days, weeks, a whole month, 2, 3, 4, and 5 months later. A full year had passed with no sign of Michaela. There were still no solid leads as to Michaela's whereabouts at the conclusion of the first year. That pattern continued for another year, and then for 2 more. Their hearts were left with nothing more than a lasting hole as their hope began to fade. Jack was the only person who continued to hold on to hope amidst the detectives and Michaela's friends and family, who gradually lost interest in finding her. There had always been uncertainty hanging over Jack. About an hour after he reported Michaela missing, they came out. His ex-wife became more accusing, holding him responsible for Michaela's abduction. Camilla used the opportunity to launch court fight after legal battle, depleting Jack's resources both monetarily and emotionally. But Elisa stuck at Jack's side despite the turbulent legal disputes and the uncertainties. She became his source of strength since her love was unwavering. The 5th anniversary of Michaela's disappearance elapsed after another year. Jack was now a broken man, tormented by the memory of his daughter's absence. As Alyssa watched him fall apart, she was overcome with a sense of helplessness. One fateful morning while Jack was laying out his yard, there was a metallic clink that shook the stillness. His pruning shears had touched something metal that was buried deep in the ground. He found a chain buried there, the links shining with the dew of the morning. After being dragged, the chain resisted. Retracing his steps, he grasped his waist, trying to recall if he had ever seen this chain before. But Jack was unable to recall setting the chain into the ground. Jack saw the chain was more than just knotted as he struggled with the unyielding dirt. It appeared to be linked to something buried far below. Curiosity eclipsed the frustration that began to seep in. When Jack realized he needed more than his basic gardening tools, he called his neighbor Russo, who had a variety of digging gear. Enticed by the enigma, Russo consented to assist with the excavation. Jack and Russo, equipped with shovels and resoluteness, excavated for several hours, trailing the corroded metal links of the chain. The suspense in the air increased with every second that went by, as though the earth itself was holding its breath. For the first time in a long time, Jack felt as though the issues he had encountered throughout the previous 5 years had vanished. After searching for a while, the two eventually discovered the metallic edges of a chest. Their spines tingled at its sheer immensity, which suggested a sinister mystery. For Jack, everything changed as the chest opened. With a creak, the lid opened to expose mounds of notes, garments, shoes, coats, and papers instead of riches. There was an aura of dread in the air. The two neighbors started going through the belongings and came upon ancient journals that told a terrifying tale of remorse and participation in a horrible murder. The posts described a sinister story that shouldn't have been made public, notwithstanding their initial vagueness. Jack felt the shame become more familiar as he read more. He immediately thought of Michaela. The stories in the journals repeated the anguish he'd felt when she disappeared 5 years prior. But it was just part of the story. Jack kept reading because he couldn't get rid of the sensation that this was a familiar narrative. His suspicions began to solidify that his wife had something to do with Michaela's abduction. The woman wasn't she there when Michaela vanished? Jack recalled thinking that Alyssa had something to hide. He could tell that she was clearly uncomfortable trying to ease his agony. She appeared to be concealing something, as though she was making an excessive effort. Jack made the decision to question Alyssa about the journals before deciding to involve anybody else or point the finger. He turned from denial to horror when he showed her the papers and the clothing. Alyssa lost her cool and fled into the backyard, where mayhem was waiting for her. The once tidily planted area now looked like a murder scene. The evil she had committed 5 years prior could no longer be contained in the formerly immaculate backyard. Having nowhere to hide, Alyssa gave in and admitted. The first thing she asked herself was, why had I done all of this when Jack had only shown her love and respect? He had arranged everything through his ex-wife Camilla, but there was only half of the story. There were yet more revelations that would shred Jack's life to pieces. She intended to cause you pain, Alyssa said. She approached me with various threats, including blackmail. She put my father, my brothers, and my family in danger. A threat to come after you, too. She's alive, Alyssa muttered in response. Michaela's alive and well. Jack gave her a quick glance. Why would she torture him like this after all she'd known and enabled him to go through? Enough, he stumbled, tears smearing his eyes. Please, enough! Alyssa disclosed that throughout the previous 5 years, she and Michaela had been communicating covertly. Alyssa had battled valiantly to locate the kid after Camilla had taken her to her in-laws in Alaska. She kept in constant communication with her, informing her of her dad's condition, but she was unable to inform Jack because she was aware of his abilities. He would travel directly to Alaska, and the fallout would be severe. I'm okay with facing the consequences of my actions, Alyssa said. I've wronged you, and I'll accept whatever comes. She appeared in court several times during the following several months, but she wasn't the one on trial. She testified against Camilla, who had angrily refuted Jack's charges against her. She supported Jack in his pursuit of justice. The courtroom turned into a combat zone where falsehoods and truth collided. After all she had gone through, it was the least she could do. Following an extended legal battle, the court declared Camilla guilty of her nefarious actions. The sentencing was a bittersweet win for Jack and Alyssa, who had fought for the truth as well as Michaela's homecoming. With the verdict, a chapter came to a close and a new one began. one in which justice was done, but not completely able to heal the wounds in their hearts. Camilla's setback was followed by a much-needed reunion. Reunited with his daughter, Jack felt a mixture of relief and resentment. Though it didn't completely heal the wounds from the past, the happiness of discovering her alive did. Camilla accepted responsibility for her acts, serving her term for the suffering she caused, and after admitting her part in the incident, Elisa chose a road of atonement by volunteering in the community. For Jack and Michaela, it was the end of a nightmare that lasted 5 years. With her devoted golden dog Buddy by her side, Kate sat on the front porch, tears running down her cheeks. "Where's Jimmy, Buddy? How is my little kid doing?" With tears in her eyes, she stared at the empty gate that her 8-year-old son was supposed to have arrived at hours before. Buddy had gone to get Jimmy up from the bus stop as required, but he came back by himself. When Kate found out that Justin, Jimmy's father, was still at work, her initial optimism that he had picked him up from school vanished. Jimmy had left the premises alone, according to a call to the school. Kate gripped Jimmy's teddy bear and stared at the gate, her dread growing. Weeping, she prayed for his coming back. Out of nowhere, an automobile stopped outside the gate. Returned from the police station, it was Justin. "Justin, was Jimmy found? How did the cops respond?" Kate questioned, shaky. Justin's expression was riveted in concern. "Kate, they're still searching. All we need to do is hang on a little bit longer." Kate started crying. "Jimmy is just simply, and I'm very concerned. Find our boy, please." In an attempt to console Kate, Justin pledged to stop at nothing to bring Jimmy back. Sensed the hopelessness, they went inside. Buddy was waiting for Jimmy by curling up on the doormat. As the evening went on, several calls to friends and relatives were made, but nobody knew anything about Jimmy. Justin eventually gave his parents, Frank and Barbara, a call. He said, "Jimmy's missing." His mother yelled, "How could you let this happen?" "Mom, now is not the moment. We have to locate Jimmy," Justin answered, ending the conversation. Distressed by the abduction of their grandchild, Barbara and her husband Frank drove to their son's home. Barbara went over to Kate when they got there. She was crying on the couch. "How on earth did Kate allow this to occur? Our grandson was meant to be under your care. How are you so irresponsible?" Kate was very hurt by Barbara's remarks. "Barbara, I didn't let this happen," Kate sobbed in response. "You accusing me is unbelievable. Jimmy needs to be our first priority. Just please leave me alone." After Justin gave her Jimmy's picture, Kate told them what her little son had been wearing when they had last seen him. A comprehensive search was initiated by the community and the cops. They also spoke with Jimmy's neighborhood-dwelling classmates. "He was content," one of my classmates said. "He told me he was excited about something." "Did he tell you what he was excited about?" Officer Matthew inquired. "No, we were eager to get home when the bell rung earlier. The first person to leave class was Jimmy." The police continued to knock on doors until they found Jimmy, but none of his pals had any new information that would lead them to Jimmy. Finally, when they reached the last house, one of Jimmy's buddies cautiously said, "He told me he was happy about meeting Kahneman, his imaginary friend." "Jesus, Kahneman officer is not real," Kate exclaimed. "It's a made-up character that Justin and I created. Whenever Jimmy threw tantrums, we'd tell him that Kahneman would not bring him any more candies to get him to behave." The inquiry that night came to a standstill. Kate addressed the principal the following day, and a heated discussion took place in the principal's office. "You are in charge of the kids. How are you able to be so reckless? My son disappeared from your school in the middle of the day," yelled Kate. As the cops asked to view the CCTV tape, Justin attempted to calm her down. They observed Jimmy racing down the corridor in the security room. "That's him! That's our Jimmy!" Kate pointed at the video and exclaimed. As Jimmy was observed entering the gymnasium and departing by the rear entrance, their optimism gave way to uncertainty. The door led to a playground and rear courtyard, which was closed for development, the principal stated. The parents looked around the playground frantically for clues. The police observed a gate going to the main road and a half-built wall. Despite displaying Jimmy's photo and asking the workers about him, none of them remembered ever seeing him. A young employee then came up to them. "I believe I saw this boy enter this gate and proceed. I returned to collect my phone when we were eating lunch in the cafeteria," he stated. Hopeful parents demanded further information. He seemed a little uneasy and was by himself. He was waving and grinning as he made his way toward an automobile. The worker recalled, "He got in and the car sped away." "What memories do you have of the car? The hue? The chauffeur?" Justin begged. "No, I wasn't really attentive." The employee said, "I believe it was a white car, but I'm not sure," leaving Kate and Justin clinging to a glimmer of hope. Could it be kidnapping? To Kate, Justin murmured. Being a wealthy realtor in the city, he believed that his son may have been kidnapped and held for ransom. But why would he grin as he walked up to the car? What if our son actually knew this person? That's it, Justin. And that's it. Perhaps the person who stole him was someone he knew, someone we all know. However, who? Officer Matthew chose not to draw any quick judgments just yet, though. Despite Kate's reasonable suspicions, the police reassured the couple that they would keep looking for their kid and delegated the task to the department to look into further. The search grew more intense over the next few days, but it was fruitless. The mystery was exacerbated by the useless CCTV video near Jimmy's school, which was caused by malfunctioning cameras. Kate's sadness deepened. She sobbed and clutched Jimmy's shirt one day, asking, "Is he even alive?" Justin tried to soothe her, trying to be strong. "He is doing okay. He'll shortly return home." However, Justin had begun to lose hope in his heart as well. The family's sorrow was alleviated when Barbara and her spouse expressed regret for previous charges. Amid their grief, they were aware that Buddy was gone. After frantically scanning the area, Buddy came back with Jimmy's backpack, which included a terrifying discovery: a doll's head that had been severed with the words, "Find him if you can." Startled, Justin and Kate hurried to the police precinct. It has been 7 days since Jimmy vanished. Officer Matthew, taken aback by the facts, demanded an urgent inquiry and support. Buddy had located Jimmy's backpack, and the police searched the area, but they had no leads. The video of Buddy getting the bag was the only hint, not even with the assistance of K9 units. "Officers, please locate our son. After noticing the message in the doll, we're afraid for Jimmy's life," sobbed Justin. Kate closed herself in their room and remained silent, her body paralyzed with shock and sadness. All her dreams had been dashed when Jimmy's clothing and shoes, a message, and a mangled doll's head were found. "Kate, come out of the room." When Justin knocked on Kate's door, her reaction broke my heart. "Go away from me. You and those policemen can't even find my kid, and I want him back." Later on, Kate had an epiphany. With Justin trailing behind, she rushed out of the home and halted close to the collapsed structure where Buddy had discovered Jimmy's bag. This location is one I recall. "Do you recall that horrible accident from last year, Justin?" she inquired. "Yes, I do recall. Jimmy was among the children playing here," Justin said, perplexed by the link. "Consider, how did Jimmy's bag get here in this same location at the same time that he was hurt the previous year?" There seemed to be a connection between their son's absence and the accident, as Kate said. "It feels like someone was trying to tell us something." This is Grace. It makes sense why Jimmy was able to identify the driver. Remember that she got hurt when the wall collapsed? But I left Jimmy when she sought for aid because I was so desperate to save her. Feeling guilty, she cried out, "I left her to die." What if it's a kind of retaliation? Do you recall how, when she left our neighborhood, she glanced at me? Now scared, Justin consented to phone the police. Grace, the previous neighbor, had lately relocated to another building on the same block, the cops quickly discovered. They discovered she had moved out a week prior when they got to her new house. "We must find out where her phone is. We could have a lead," Officer Matthew hurriedly said. At last, there was a lead. The last place Grace's phone was in use was on the town's edge near the woods. "We're on our way there at the moment." In the depth of despair, Matthew said, "We need more backup," giving rise to a ray of optimism. As Kate and Justin sped behind the cruisers toward the dense woods, tension was in the air. Their hearts raced as they edged nearer, fearing much darker things than they could have ever imagined. Officer Matthew asked the pair to wait while he searched, but Kate's desperate search for her kid drove her over the line. Kate disregarded the police's cautions and proceeded into the dense woods while Justin and the officers were busy looking for updates. "Hi, Jimmy. Tom. Where are you, Jimmy, my love? It's Mama. Are you out there, Jimmy?" Abruptly, she was struck in the head and became unconscious. Kate awoke in a dark hut, tied, and saw Grace in front of her. "Oh, Kate, you've woken up at last," Grace said in a shivering voice. "Oh, by the way, I finished him," Grace chuckled ominously. "Please, just say no. Where is Jimmy?" Kate started crying. Grace wrapped her arms around Kate, laughing aloud. "Cry for me again, just as I wept that day when you abandoned me under that wall. You are the reason I lost everything, Kate. I miscarried because you disregarded my pleas for assistance. My spouse passed away. I was unable to bear him another kid, so he departed." Grace charged. "You destroyed my life while you enjoyed yours. Grace, I apologize for your passing. Look, I had no idea that you were expecting. Once more, I apologize." Kate pleaded, "Please go from my boy. Slow down. I will not murder your son. I will take him away and raise him to be my own." "And now," Grace said, pointing a rifle at Kate, "it's time for you to die." Grace was ready to press the trigger when the cabin door exploded and the police barged in. "Drop the weapon!" Officer Matthew gave the order. Jimmy was found alive but detained in another room by the cops. The cops acted quickly to free Kate and Jimmy, finally bringing the family back together. Justin said, "Thank you, Officer Matthew," with sincere appreciation. The officer noted, "It was your wife's quick thinking, sharing her location with you before heading into the woods." Buddy welcomed Jimmy with great enthusiasm when he got home. Jimmy's safe homecoming was welcomed by the family with a mixture of joy and sorrow. "Jimmy, we've missed you so much," Justin and Kate said in unison. "Even I have missed you." Jimmy pledged, "I swear I won't talk to strangers or slip away again." After everything, Justin and Kate reaffirmed their resolve to follow their gut feelings and stick together no matter what obstacles life threw at them. It is standard etiquette to take off your shoes, luggage, or coat from an unoccupied seat when a public transit system becomes congested and another rider needs a seat. One teenager, nevertheless, had to learn this lesson the hard way. She learned a terrible lesson from the LAPD, despite criticism directed against the officer. Was he going too far? On the Metro Red Line, Bethany Nava was ordered to get off by a police officer who was implementing the rule against placing feet on chairs. As stated by the LA Times, video of Nava's conversation with the LAPD sergeant started to emerge almost instantly. The 18-year-old is heard being asked to off the train and being motioned to stand up at the start of the video. "When you didn't, I already instructed you what to do. You ignored my orders." The youngster, who ostensibly refused to take off her feet from the seat so that other passengers, some of whom were elderly, could sit down, was informed by the officer, "You're getting off the train." Regretfully, the entitled girl defied the officer's orders once more. That's when the situation changed. Grabbing Nava's arm, the Los Angeles policeman started to remove the girl from the train. "Cease! Leave me alone!" she urged. She objected even more, saying, "I paid to be on the train. I'm getting off the train because of you." She said, "I can't get my stuff," as she persisted in her resistance. She was violently pulled off the public transit system by her arm by the LAPD officer. The Daily Mail stated that the cop pinned Nava against the platform wall after removing her off the city metro. "This is not fair that you took me off the train because I had my foot there because I was comfortable like that," she said. She started crying as spectators said it wasn't a big problem and pleaded with the police not to do this. But Nava persisted in resisting after calling the officer a derogatory term, and others started to assemble around her. The policeman had to make a backup call. "Everything is captured on camera," this individual informed the police while Nava started to cry. Another lady cursed at the officer, saying, "Are you kidding me right now? There's no law that tells me I cannot sit that way because I paid to be in there," Nava said. "It's the train's rules, not to mention common decency, since the train was crowded with people seen standing, unable to find an empty seat," the officer quickly corrected her. The once whimpering 18-year-old started yelling at the police again, this time with an audience on her side. The other woman, subsequently revealed to be 22-year-old Selena Luga, jumped right in. "You think you can do this?" Luga made a demand. She called the officer derogatory names and persisted in yelling at him after urging others to acquire his badge number. The gathering of people persisted in taunting the officer. "Are you serious?" Luga said. "You really have nothing to do," as the women on the platform were still arguing with the police. Then Luga used the race card, claiming that Nava was being singled out by the police in order to fulfill his monthly arrest target, and threatening to stay because she was going to defend her people. When more police eventually showed there, they handcuffed Nava and Luga, who kept cursing while being led away. "Would you like to try acting like they can do everything they want, like this?" Luga said, "Freak you guys," and then seemed to spit at one cop. Later, Nava's mother claimed to KTLA that her daughter had just placed her heel on the edge of her own seat and that her daughter had been brought to the hospital with a sprained wrist. In a different interview, her daughter refuted such statements. Nevertheless, she filed a lawsuit, and as a result of her claims, the LAPD was looking into whether or not Nava had used excessive force during her arrest and was going over all of the footage that had been taken of the event. Nava was in violation of Metro's 28-page Code of Conduct for customers. According to the guidelines, it is not acceptable to engage in disorderly conduct by putting shoes or feet on furniture. Furthermore, it states that such behavior might result in removal from the train. Nevertheless, there was a backlash against the officer's conduct. Some said he overreached since they thought the teen's behavior amounted to such a minor transgression. You should ask those who appear to be indifferent to Bethany Nava's actions whether they would want to sit in the spot where she left her soiled shoes. Many people wear pricey workplace dress when using public transit. They shouldn't have to sit in the squalor left by some adolescent who values her comfort over everyone else's. Perhaps the girl's mother could teach her daughter some fundamental life skills, such as how to behave politely in public, how to keep your feet on the ground, how to respect other people's personal space, and how to always obey legal commands from law enforcement. What impression do you have of this event? Tell us in the space provided for comments. The Mexican authorities were in for a life-changing surprise when they invaded what seemed like a typical border-side house. Although they had been tipped off that the property had a covert smuggler's tunnel, what they found out when they looked inside was rather startling. The property in issue was in Tijuana, Mexico, and the entrance to the tunnel was, of all things, hidden behind a wardrobe door. Smugglers had a direct route to deliver illegal drugs from the Mexican city to San Diego, California, thanks to the more than a mile-long tunnel. But the tunnel opening was so tiny that it confused investigators. Despite the little entry, how in the world could these smugglers get away with their illicit activities? The tunnel itself was 3 feet in width and 5 feet in height, providing ample space for an individual to pass through. The access required a treacherous climb, but that didn't stop the smugglers from attempting. The San Diego tunnel ended at a little opening that might have been covered up with an ordinary trash can. It was not rare that the tunnel led to the rear of a pallet warehouse. Smugglers frequently purchase respectable companies to conceal their true profit-making endeavors. The authorities waited, knowing that if the tunnel was located, they would need to apprehend the guys who were spearheading the project. They once noticed a truck driving away from the pallet plant. It was traveling to a point in the middle of San Diego. When the time was right, they acted, having watched as the truck was filled with boxes. The vehicle contained drug-filled cartons, thus they were justified in what they did. The investigators discovered a sizable black market for illicit drugs inside the truck. It held around 7 tons of marijuana and 1 ton of cocaine together. Although not the greatest quantity of illicit substances ever seized by law enforcement, this was nevertheless a sizable haul. It was now time to start interrogating these alleged smugglers as well as other possible offenders. 6 persons were detained by the authorities in connection with the bust. 3 Mexicans, 2 Cubans, and 1 American were all taken into custody. It was usual to locate criminals on both sides of the border in significant busts like this one. Eventually, the Border Patrol made available images of the smuggler's tunnel as well as information about how it was built. The extent of the tunnel's complex design astounded the authorities. In the event of floods, it included water pumps, ventilation, and power. The fact that everything was dug out by hand and done without the use of machines made it all the more amazing. This tunnel functioned as a successful means of smuggling illicit substances worth tens of millions of dollars for months without the police noticing. Finding them was nearly hard due to the crowded San Diego warehouse and the secret entry in the Tijuana wardrobe. Unbelievably, there are more tunnels like this one on the border than you may imagine. 13 such tunnels have been discovered by officials since 2006. It is unknown for how long this tunnel had been in operation, even though authorities in San Diego had been keeping an eye on the pallet warehouse for a full year prior to their arrest. It may have been one of the tunnels utilized by the notorious drug dealer and escape artist El Chapo, for all the authorities know. José Guzmán. An essential component of the Mexican drug lord Loera's enterprise, better known by his stage name El Chapo, were well-built tunnels. Images of the tunnels he used to get away from his several hideouts were made public by the authorities in 2014. They were quite creative. El Chapo and his associates were so adept at building these tunnels that they even used one to get out of his confinement. El Chapo used a small opening concealed in his shower cell to break out of jail. The motorbike, converted to travel on a track, was at the end of the tunnel. El Chapo arrived at the exterior of a warehouse around 1 mile distant after traveling. Before El Chapo was apprehended once more, he conducted some further business outside of the law. Drug smugglers are also using sophisticated tunnels more frequently than El Chapo did to get away. Authorities discovered what they dubbed a super tunnel in 2013. It had reinforced walls, lighting, ventilation, and an additional automated track system for convenient transit. It was the length of 6 football fields. Building a tunnel like this might cost hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. But frequently, the expense is well worth it. The tunnel pays for itself with just one successful narcotics transit. In addition, the tunnels can be utilized to assist in granting undocumented immigrants passage. A 380-mile tunnel that connected Mexico to a restaurant in California was discovered by officials in 2016. People who were attempting to escape Mexico may have passed via the tunnel because of its size. It is possible that immigrants passing via these tunnels are exchanging their passage for narcotics. Since 1990, authorities have found 115 tunnels that link Mexico to the U.S. There were only 11 of these tunnels found before the September 11, 2001 attacks. Drug traffickers were left with little choice except to develop tunnels or give up their trade due to the increased security measures implemented following those incidents. The use of these tunnels to move products and narcotics is now significantly more challenging because to recent U.S. sanctions. 2 incomplete tunnels are found, and their construction stopped by authorities for every completed tunnel that is found. There are other ways than tunnels that individuals have attempted to smuggle drugs and persons into the United States. People have been discovered by Border Patrol agents hiding amid cattle, in the backs of vehicles, and inside cars. U.S. President Donald Trump suggested erecting a wall along the border between Mexico and the U.S. in an effort to thwart the illegal immigration and drug trade. Building his wall would cost more than $20 billion, and it is unlikely that it would stop people from using ladders or tunnels. Thus, what are the best ways to stop the drug trade and reduce illegal immigration? It appears that stopping the Americans engaged in these 2 acts is the best course of action. Neither practice will be feasible without domestic support. The extent individuals would go to in order to earn a profit is absurd, don't you think? Hopefully, law enforcement on both sides of the border will keep catching and discouraging illegal activity. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. If you enjoyed the tale, the next video that plays on your screen will probably move you too.